Hi guys, and welcome to tonight's Music Tech live webinar. Tonight we're going to be just talking about distortion. I'm sorry for the late start. We've just been having a few technical issues. Hopefully we've managed to get the audio sorted, but it still seems to be a bit high and still a bit bottly. So if it's a big problem, then I might have to bail on this one. But we're gonna give it our best shot and see what happens. So tonight we're going to talk about distortion. We're just going to look at what distortion is, how it's going to be used, who's using it, and how it's been developed. It's quite a brief one, actually, but nevertheless, it's still quite interesting. So if you've got any questions about distortion, give us a tweet on Twitter, and we'll try and we'll try and answer all your questions here. Or if you've got any other Q&As, just please feel free to ask them during the Q&A section, and we'll give it our best shot to answer them there as well. Okay. So what we're going to try and do here is, why distortion? How has distortion developed? Why has it come about? It's not the most natural thing to think of when you think about sound production and creativity. Distortion is probably low down on there when you kind of think about it. But we're gonna investigate why that's kind of come about, why it's become so popular actually. Then we're going to look at some different kinds of distortion, of which there are many. Then we're going to look at how to apply the distortion effect, best practices as it were, although it's not as obvious with this particular effect. We're going to try a demonstration, and that's the part of the show that I've been struggling with tonight. So I might have to redo that bit and post it up a bit later if I can't get that working. And then finally, we'll just have a little Q&A. So why distortion? Why is it so popular? How has it come about? Now, many people believe that the first person or the first band to kind of do distortion was the Kinks, and their guitarist Dave Davis slashed his speaker. I'm not sure if he did this accidentally or if it was on purpose or whatever, but he slashed his speaker, and this effect that came from that, this kind of feedback, kind of overpowering sound that he got from that, was the one that he liked so much. So he kind of incorporated that into his live performance, and I believe it was during a live performance that he actually did that, and that became their signature effect, especially for You Really Got Me. The next person to kind of really push distortion along, Jimi Hendrix. You know, when you think of distortion, you really think about all the kind of effects that he had applied to his guitar and all the kind of things that he used to do to his guitar and kind of push that forward. Now, Jimi Hendrix was definitely the man when it comes to 1960s sort of guitarists and people kind of innovating with different effects. He was definitely the man to listen to and see what's happening there. Now, from the 1960s, and kind of in the same kind of vein as what Jimi Hendrix was doing, it's this psychedelic era with the Beatles and the Beach Boys and people like that, where they're really looking at expanding the soundscape and expanding what you can do with sound. And a lot of them turned to either modulation effects, which we'll be looking at next week, or they turned to distortion. And many other effects, many other tape effects and things like that. And these were all about the tonal qualities. When you think of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and you look at all the things that they were doing with tape and all the things that they were kind of generating. 1960s was a really powerful time for effects, okay? And then you look at the generation of effects pedals and where that's developed from and who's doing what with effects pedals. So this is why, and I mean, you really need to be listening to kind of music to hear it on the tracks to see kind of how it's incorporated. But this is where it's come from, this kind of 1950s 1960s movement. So the kind of distortion effects that are most popular currently and from the 1960s onwards, you've got the overdrive, which is this kind of overpowering tone generated kind of effect. You've got this fuzz, which is a combination of overdrive and just more of a, well, it's called a fuzz for that reason, because it gives you these fuzzy tones. And then you have these distortion effects, which is kind of your feedback, okay? So your feedback is that when you put your electric guitar up against the amp and you pull it backwards and forwards a little bit, and it gives you that kind of, whoa, that's, you know, stop it before it blows up my speaker. And then the more modern one about these is the bit cruncher. Now, the bit cruncher is an easy one because whenever you think about what we're doing with music production and what we're doing with live production, you really think about high quality sampling. And all of a sudden, this bit crunch comes along and it takes a 92-bit kind of sample ratio and it takes it to a 4-bit. just to get those crunchier, horrible MP3 kind of low resolution sounds. Not good MP3s, but bad MP3s, the way they used to be done. And it's made an effect out of that, which is fantastic, really, when you think about it. And you can also have combinations between these. Now, the phase distortion is a good one, but that we'll kind of cover a little bit more next week, because that's really looking at modulation and the way modulation and distortion can work. Okay, so there's lots and lots of things. Now, the parameters on a distortion effect are not common, and I mean, the overall thing, they're just looking at these high gain boosts and these tonality controls, but they do vary quite a lot. And it's no different than what we were talking about last week, where yes, you do have these set things that things are happening and things are being done, but actually more often than not, these parameters on these individuals are what gives it that characteristic of that individual effect unit, be it a pedal or be it some kind of hardware. So they are very individual in many respects. How to apply effect. Now, as per always, you have two ways of applying an effect. You can have it as an insert, or you can have it as a send. Now, if you have it as an insert, you've got to think about this. It's going to take over 100% of that channel. Okay, if you have it as a send, you get to control how much of that effect you want put on. Now, if you're on a guitar and you're kind of switching between effects, when that pedal comes in, that's an insert effect. It's punched in and it takes over the whole channel. And for guitars, this is most commonly the way. However, if you wanted to put this effect on a different instrument, say a vocal or something else, you really are going to be looking at maybe using it as an insert. And there is no real kind of set way of doing this. Lots of people like different ways of doing it, but you do need to understand that there are a few things that you can consider. For instance, if you intend to use the same distortion on multiple instruments, it probably is a good call to put it on as a send effect, just so that you can just crank up the dial to 100% that way, but you don't have to overload your CPU, so you can actually just use it, and that's that. And it just gets, and it's, you know, you get to use the same effect on multiple instruments. Okay, so those are the main differences. But once again, there is no rule of thumb. There is no best practice when it comes to distortion, apart from those considerations. Now, the demonstration. The idea with tonight's demonstration is hopefully to show you the difference between a sound without distortion and a sound with distortion. So we're just going to look at a few different ways to apply it and just see if we can do it. Now, please bear with me. Like I say, a minute ago, it was being a bit temperamental, so it may or may not work. If it doesn't work, then I might have to bail on this bit and just kind of give it to you guys during the week as an extra. Okay, but that being said, we're going to give it our best try, and hopefully it's all working. So just bear with me while I switch over, and we're going to go to our main screen now. So let's just do that quickly. Okay, now straight away it doesn't look like it's working overly well. So if I just press play, and let's just see if I can get this in. Let me just switch between it. No, it's out. There's no sound there for you guys to be had. I'm so sorry about that. Like I said, I will give it to you again, and I'll probably remake this demonstration. I didn't want to let you guys down by not being here tonight, but that's a bit of a shame. Anyway, since you guys are here, and we've got a few in tonight, looks like we've got 6 or 7 in. Since you guys are here, let's just go through a few things. Now, although you can't hear it, you still got a good indication that there's some parts happening here. So what we have on this first one is a part that's just playing loads of different notes. And all I've done is I've come over to the compressor here, and I've added a pedal board and an amp. Now, an amp on its own is fantastic. And like we said last week, you have to think about the order in which you put these. If you put the amp on top of the pedal board, it's going to give you a completely different effect than the other way around, okay? So it's something you might want to experiment with. Now, let's go to the amp first. And once again, I'm sorry you can't hear this. And I will redo this so you can hear it. But let's just do this. And I'll try and demonstrate it without sound. And maybe you guys can do it for yourselves anyway. So the first thing with putting on distortion is this gain effect. So within the amp itself, the first kind of distortions that we were getting were just purely from the gain being cranked up way too loud. Okay, so that was giving us our first area of distortion. Now, from that come pedal boards. Now, Logic has this really nice pedal board. I think this is new from version 9. So if you guys are using version 9, you can get this easy enough. So this is kind of the pedal board, and this is kind of a multi-effects unit. And when you look at this in a live situation, all of these are kind of rigged together. So you can actually chain them on, and you have this hard on and off button. Okay, so straight away here, there's three different kinds of distortion effect. We have our high boost, which is really simple. You can look across the full bandwidth of the frequencies, or you can just concentrate on the trebles, and then you can boost this gain dial here just for the full one or the treble. And the good thing about this is you can have it turn on or you can have it turn off. So during the verse, for instance, you can have it turn off and you can play these really nice small riffs. But then as soon as the chorus comes along, crank it on and away you go. And it's the same with the fuzz. Now, the fuzz, you have these obvious fuzz tunes. Now, fuzz to my ear is just white noise, and it's a different distinction of white noise. Then the tonal quality, again, is looking at frequencies that you want that fuzz to kind of happen in. And then once again, with the volume, it's how much gain you want to put to this particular distortion. And I love this. I love the fact that it's such a hard dial. You can have it on or you can have it off. And I think that's why guitarists like it so much, because when it comes to arranging, it gives you that much more flexibility, which is fantastic. Let me just have this grit here, which is kind of your overdrive and kind of feedback, as it were. So real hard distortion effects there. Now I wanted to bring this one up because this is a long note, and you'll hear this quite a lot. And if you're trying to think about arrangement techniques, having these long notes which have distortion on can give so much momentum to a piece. And same again, I've just put an amp on and I've put a pedal board on. I've cranked up the gain on the amp, and I can't remember which one we're using. There seems to be something going on with my mouse tonight. It keeps disconnecting as well. I don't seem to be having much luck tonight. I'm sorry about that. Anyway, not to worry. So we turn on the pedal board, and with this one, we've just got a few other ones. And once again, I've just got two different kinds of fuzzes here. The mission tonight was just to show you the difference between the two. I mean, I don't know if it's come back yet or not. I don't think you guys can hear that. Anyway, so the mission was just to show you a few different fuzz effects. Now this one's got a little bit more, and they've called things like roar and growl and things like that. And fundamentally, it's just about experimenting with that. And then we had this roto phaser, which is basically your phase distortion. Okay, the final one was this bit crunch. Now, bit crunch I use quite a bit on percussive sounds as well, because it does give me that nice crunchy effect. And I've had to use this because you don't really have a bit cruncher, or I'm not sure you do have a bit cruncher on the actual pedal board. I've just used this as an insert effect, okay? So I've just come in and they've got this really nice one, and it is under distortions, I believe. Yes, under distortions, bit cruncher. And then you can just play around with how much drive you want, how much gain you want, what resolution you want, all the way down to 1 bit. And then kind of the clipping level if you really want to push that distortion. And you can also choose between the modes, which is quite good. Down sampling. Really interesting to play around with. Anywho, let me switch back to the presentation and just see if you guys have got any questions. Once again, I really do apologize for not being able to give you the audio tonight. It literally 10 minutes before the show, it just started playing up on me, but not to worry, these things happen. That's the downside of doing a live webinar. Anyway, so we've got a few, so let's go over to the Twitter. So we've got 4 people viewing at the minute. So what we got? Any of you guys got any questions? Any of you guys got any thoughts on this? Let's just have a look at Twitter, and let's have a look at the Q&A on this, see what we got. Okay, so let's bring up the Q&A. Let's bring up the discussion panel, see what we got over there. No worries. Here we go, we've got 20 notifications, so we've got a few in here. So we've got one here from Dave. How would I create heavy distortion for an electric guitar using a DAW without creating a muddy, unclear tone? That's an interesting one, but you could use a combination of EQ with that. So if you didn't want the muddier tones, you can actually hone in on the EQ frequencies for that. So bring up your EQ panel and then drop some of the lower frequencies that are particularly significant with that sound. And you would have to work out that you'd have to kind of sculpt that the way you want it. But that's a fair question. Thanks for that. Thanks for that one. So what we got here? Music Tech 101. Yeah, it has zero distortion. Yeah, I'm sorry. I think that's referring to the fact that I can't get any sound up tonight. Once again, I will post this again. I'll recreate this in about half an hour or so, and we'll try and get some sound up on this. Someone else said the audio sounds great. Ah, well, I'm not hearing it. Oh, I'm so sorry. If it was working, I really apologize. I just was not hearing it. Oh, that's my bad then if it wasn't working. AM hyped for tonight's webinar. Fantastic. So we've got a few. I think I've gone through all of them, but certainly seems like we had a few people in tonight, which is absolutely brilliant. Just sorry I couldn't deliver that. I can't apologize enough on that. Never mind. So next week we are going to look at modulation effects. If you have any questions in the meantime, you want to post and you want to kind of query that out, please do so. Go over to musictechstudent.co.uk and ask some questions over there. Feel free to have a look around. You can also contact us. Don't forget to join the newsletter. And I'll see you guys next week.